Live. And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live here at the Worldwide Coalition Media Headquarters at the Go Local Live Broadcast Center, 90 Way Boston Street, in the heart of the city we love, Providence, Rhode Island, the naked city, the city of 1,000 stories. CoalitionRadio.us, Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_Radio, and of course our all apolitical Billionaire Baseball Boys Club Twitter feed, where we talk about a certain group of collectivists who've decided that they are entitled to taxpayer money. Of course, that is at Pawtucket is home. Got a very special lineup this week. The political battles in the state have really, I would say, in the last week or so, been enjoined. So in studio tonight, and joining me in just a moment, is Patricia Morgan. She is, of course, the House Minority Leader from the Republican Party, and by many accounts, really the potential nominee for the governor's race here in the state of Rhode Island, up and coming. In the second hour, Mr. Farina, who is the City Council President of the great city of Cranston. And at 8 o'clock, Mr. John Gonzalez, who is a rising star, if you will, sort of a YouTube and video phenomenon. He has been a hardcore environmentalist activist, involved obviously in what we refer to here as Invenergy, but will also be giving us a perspective on the no LNG in Providence controversy. So let's get right down to it. Joining me tonight in studio is someone who's joined me by phone in my past iterations, what we call here Coalition 1.0, when we were live on radio on WPRO. She is known to all Rhode Islanders as a, let's just say, someone firmly in the corner of taxpayers everywhere, regardless of your political stripe or affiliation. She's got quite a story to tell, and given the beauty of this medium, we've got an hour to talk about it. Of course, I'm talking about Patricia Morgan, representative, probable nominee for the Republican nomination for governor here in the state. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for listening.
No, it's. I want to spend this hour. I'm going to turn this into what I'll call a Patricia Morgan infomercial, because we really want to get a lot of perspective and go in depth on a lot of different issues. But first, let's get right to it. You know, folks have seen you over the years as first as a representative, as someone who was activist as a representative in some tricky situations in Coventry, and as an outstanding taxpayer activist. And then, of course, now as you've ascended to the role of House Minority Leader, and you are part of the conversation. Sometimes you've had to inject yourself into the conversation, yes, but you are absolutely part of the conversation here in the state about the direction the state's taking, the challenges facing ordinary Rhode Islanders, and both as taxpayers and as folks who are essentially customers of the state of Rhode Island. And I thought it was critical at this point in the election process that before this turns into the usual mainstream media spin cycle of, sound bites and, controversies over nothing, that we really get an opportunity to hear from you about issues. But first of all, tell us about yourself. What's your background? Folks, I like to refer to as that eureka moment. Tell us also that eureka moment when you decided that you needed to get involved, not just as a bystander, not just as someone who had an opinion, but someone who was going to become intimately involved in supporting the taxpayers of Rhode Island.
Yeah, so where do you want to start? Do you want to start
from the very beginning?
What my background is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, I'm from Ohio.
Okay.
I grew up in Canal Fulton, Ohio, which is south of Akron.
Wow.
My dad built tires for Firestone Tire and Rubber Company.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, he was such a good tire maker that occasionally they would pull him off the line for a couple of months a year to build the tires for the Indianapolis 500.
Really?
So yeah, that was a real distinction. He was always really proud of it because he got to build those tires, and of course we had to watch the Indianapolis 500 on the TV that year.
Well, and then let me just jump in. That's interesting because Republicans in general are very often branded, I think unfairly, with the label of being corporate. You come from a proud working class family.
Yes. Where
your father was probably a union employee.
Yes.
And you come from the same background that most of us do.
I'm one of you. One of the things. I think that is my distinction in a lot of ways from the governor. She's the 12th wealthiest person in Rhode Island.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, she is.
Outstanding.
She is the 12th wealthiest person in Rhode Island. I am not. But I've worked hard, and I'm comfortable. I'm not going to say that I'm poor either. I've worked hard. I've made, I think, good choices in my life, and I'm comfortable now. But I will never forget, I was a single mother. So let me start at the beginning. I'm from Ohio again. I went to Kent State University, and yes, I was there. For those of you who are old enough,
Right.
Kent State during the Vietnam War, we had a shooting there that killed 4 students, and I was on my way to the Commons when that happened. They closed down the campus, and I worked as a waitress for a while. I knew Jan's Big Boy. But after college, I went down to Meridian, Mississippi, and married a naval aviator, and became a special education teacher at George Washington Carver Junior High School. And it was 3 wonderful years. I had 60, really mostly black, mostly on welfare kids. They were wonderful kids. It was a special education class. Nobody told me they couldn't learn, so I made them learn. I did everything I could. I worked so hard. And when I left, I think they were in a better place. They were in a better place. I know they were. Than when I began. Left Meridian, went to Jacksonville, Cecil Airfield down there, and then ended up coming up here to Rhode Island. That was 41 years ago, and I've been here ever since.
Now, how long did you continue your teaching career?
I took some time off. So I started teaching there. I taught in Florida a little bit, and then I took time off because I started having my family. So I took about 12 years off and then went back to teaching. First at Pontiac Middle School and then at Cranston High School West.
Special ed as well, or what?
Yep, special ed. My degree is actually in English, but it was hard to get a job as an English teacher, especially Victorian literature, which was my area of concentration. So I'm glad I went into special ed. I think the kids are wonderful. I really had a very good career in teaching.
Most kids are really good kids.
I like kids.
Some difficult things happen to them, and then some go astray. But I just think up to a certain, all kids are good kids. They just need the right help.
They just need the right help. Even the ones that go astray, sometimes they just need somebody who will mentor them. Sometimes just kind of find somebody who cares about them.
So you've got a hand when it comes to that point in time when you run the state. You've got a real hands-on background in terms of what can work and what won't work, literally at the classroom level.
Yes, I do, and I still have a lot of friends who are teachers. So I really do understand the challenges I think that teachers are looking at now. Our teachers are being more and more kind of pulled into writing paperwork to submit to Rhode or submit to the principal or submit, instead of looking at the children in front of them and having the instructional freedom to teach to the kids that are in front of them what those kids need on that day, on that week, and that month. Right. And I think we need to get back to there. There are really things there are moments that you can maximize. They just happen. And when they happen, you have to be able to go down that path and take kids with you. Right.
It's not something that's going to happen out of a manual, and it's not pre-programmed or planned, and it's not going to happen at a certain date.
You know, and Common Core is a big issue. I think I understand that we need to make sure every child hits a certain level of proficiency in reading, math, and writing. But I'm not sure that I think we've almost over-regulated it for teachers. We don't allow them as teachers to improve their craft. And it is a craft. Not everybody is a natural with teaching, but they can learn from other teachers. They can, it's called sitting together and sharing. What are you doing? Because I can't figure out how to teach fractions. Can you show me how to teach fractions? Teachers can help each other get better, and I don't think their day allows that very much.
Right, and listeners of the show will know that my wife, full disclosure, is a third grade teacher.
Oh,
And
I didn't know that.
And her specialty is actually, she teaches in a conventional classroom right now, but her specialty is working with children who are dyslexic.
Okay.
And it's something called Orton Gillingham certified. And
so there are different ways to even teach reading, but
Right.
if you don't allow teachers that freedom, that instructional freedom,
Right.
the kids never get it.
Yeah, and there's a couple activists I'd like to introduce you at some point offline
Okay.
who are trying their best within established state law to make sure that children who are, in reading, growing up there was a big campaign called Reading is Fundamental. Well, reading is fundamental. And interestingly enough, their challenge is, I guess, as they put it in the first few years of a child's education, they learn to read, and then ultimately at some point they have to turn the table and be able to read to learn. And there are some real challenges with the Department of Ed. I think Mr. Wagner, I think is in spirit of fairness, has just jumped into this and is doing his best to right the ship. But there's a real challenge here in the state with literacy rates, how we define literacy.
It's just tragic. I mean, if you look at the scores, the park scores here in Providence and Pawtucket, Central Falls, they are like 3 to 4% of the children are reading on grade level. It's just not acceptable. That is stunted lives until kids can read and do math. They can't even be employed at that level. It's just, we have to do better.
Right.
And honestly, I'm 100% behind teachers. We have to unleash the power in teachers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's certainly not for a lack of money being spent either.
No.
One of the things I'm going to ask the next governor is to perform a real public analysis. It doesn't have to be long-winded. We don't have to spend a lot of money doing it. But we had, it was just a few years ago that under the prior statewide ride administration, that to much national and local acclaim, we won all sorts of what they call race to the top money.
Yeah.
And I think Rhode Islanders are owed an explanation of where that money went. And that's not to imply anything insidious, but I don't think most Rhode Islanders know where it went.
No, and it doesn't feel like we raced to the top when you see those park scores.
Right.
We're not at the top, we're at the bottom. Our kids are at the bottom. That's what's worse. Our kids are at the bottom. And I don't blame teachers. I really don't. But we have to figure this out.
Right.
We have to, for their lives. I mean, I've learned already, right? They need to learn, and we need to make sure that teachers can do the things to reach their students.
One of my frustrations is the, I believe, overemphasis on post-secondary education by the current governor. And
we have to get it right K through 12 first.
yeah, it's, and that's not to write off the current crop, if you will, of 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds, 17, or in some cases 18 or 19-year-olds who are in our current, I'll call it secondary level of education. But if CCRI mission is being disputed, changed, modified, morphed, seemingly it's become a political football, I think we need to go back and revisit what happens in the formative years.
Yeah, so we're giving free tuition at CCRI. I get it. Kids need those, that additional learning after high school to get some jobs out there. It's important. It is important. And I don't fundamentally have an objection to that, except if you're coming out of out of high school and you can't really read well and you can't do math, we're just setting those kids up for failure.
Right.
And one thing I know about being in special education, when a child fails and fails and fails, they stop believing in themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
That's not good. To then say, okay, we're giving you this great thing, we're going to let you go to college for free, and then they get there and all they do is fail.
Right.
That's not fair.
Yeah, I mean, the purpose of this hour is not to continually bash the current administration, but there was one particularly tone-deaf moment, I'd say about a year ago, when they had College Day.
We can
okay.
bash them if you like. It's all right with me.
It was College Day, and so, the staff and the administration came down, and they all were encouraged to wear their college sweatshirts, and you had Ivy League universities, and here you were at one of the most challenging schools in the inner city, and with kids who are in a very difficult position. And I am not going to deny that many of those kids have the talents and the will and the courage to reach the highest levels of education if they're afforded the right tools. But to dangle that in front of them, to me, was hopelessly cruel. And really, again, I'll use the term tone deaf because this is family TV. Tone deaf in the sense that it didn't reflect any of the realities of their current situation.
Yeah. And you know, if you look at electric boat and tool makers, they make good salaries.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go to a four-year college.
Right.
You really don't. But what you do have to have is the ability to read and do math and write and reason.
Mm-hmm.
And they're, from the Park scores, I can say it doesn't feel like they're getting it now.
Right. And this unholy obsession with STEM or STEAM is great. You know, STEM, science, whatever it is this year, this month, it's the cliche of the year. But that belies the critical need, if you will, for teaching critical thinking skills.
Yes. Or just the basics.
Yeah.
Honestly, just get them the basics, because once they get out of high school, they'll get a job and they'll learn how to reason within that job. They'll learn all the things that they need to make their lives better, comfortable, financially secure. But if they can't get that first job because they don't read and they don't do math,
Where are we going?
where are they going?
There was a local organization just a few years ago who cited that the product, if you will, and I hate to refer to children as product, but if you will, what was being generated by our school system in the state were borderline unemployable.
Well, that's what I'm hearing from employers out there.
Mm-hmm.
They want to hire young people, but they don't even have the fundamentals.
So you're a teacher.
Okay.
And
Yes, I am. I was.
Well, you're always a teacher. Once you're a teacher,
You're always a teacher.
So people who are political, who become leaders, there's always that eureka moment. It might be an issue.
Yep.
It might be a revelation in their personal life. There's a thousand things that all of a sudden you wake up and you make that move from just the ordinary citizen, who, by the way, is a hero. In these days, if in the state of Rhode Island you can raise a family successfully, in whatever form or variation that takes place, and if you can successfully navigate your children through all these challenges, regardless of whether you choose to be political or not, you are a hero. So, but you made that extra leap. What was there a moment, a challenge, an issue in your life? What happened, and what was your first step in politics?
So, there is something in me. I'll just tell you, there's something in me that I think it's part of our role in life, every person's role in life, to be productive in society, to help one another, to make life, society better. In West Warwick,
Mm-hmm.
I got elected to be the chairman of the West Warwick Republican Town Committee. And just about that same time, the politicians, the leaders in town, started talking about the Royal Mills. I don't know if any of you have been down to West Warwick, but the Royal Mills is a beautiful building. And when it was in full production, it was the largest cotton mill in the world. Not just in the United States, in the world. And it has 3-foot thick stone walls. On one side, it's a stone building. On the other side, it's a brick building with 18 feet high ceilings, river down the middle, little waterfall, cute little bridge. But the founding fathers there, the elected officials, started saying, well, we need to tear it down. It had been empty for about 25 years, and they wanted to tear it down. I'm sure that their friends were going to get the $5 million it was going to cost to tear it down. Their friends were going to get these beautiful oak beams, solid oak beams.
Right.
And I just said, this is part of the heritage of this little town. It's part of the heritage of Rhode Island. So I actually called Senator Chafee at the time. He was a senator. And I asked him if he knew anybody who knew anything about historic buildings who would come and help me see if this building was savable. So he gave me the names of 2 people, and I ran them down and took them on tours. And the first guy that I went through We just went everywhere, and I said, all right, can this building be saved? And he said, absolutely, there's nothing structurally wrong with this building. Now, the Democrats had been saying over and over again, oh, it was a mess, it couldn't be saved, blah, blah, blah. But this guy was saying, nothing wrong with this building. It was built to last.
Right.
So it became this, I floated it out there, I got some more developers in. They actually, the people who were in charge of West Warwick, actually, it had been open to the public, open to vagrants, teenagers, whoever wanted to go in that building for 25 years. When I started moving to save it, they put up a fence to keep me out. They said they were going to arrest me for trespassing.
There seems to be a prevailing theme here, isn't there? Folks work awfully hard to try and not let you do your thing.
Yeah, turn off my microphone, right?
Right.
But I started battling them in the paper and talking to the people of my town, and we saved it.
Yeah.
We saved it. It was a $70 million investment. It's a beautiful complex now. It's about 95% filled at all times, and people who live there just love it because it's beautiful.
And a significant contributor to the
Tax base.
taxes of one of the most, and I always say this carefully, one of the most, West Warwick's a wonderful town. It's challenged financially. There's a lot of challenges there that I want to get into later in the show, because one of my frustrations in this state is what I'll call the urban core-centric development pattern in the state. All development must be in Providence, Pawtucket. I mean, there's a story there. So
There's a story there.
So when did you first run for elective office?
So I actually ran in 2004 against Speaker Murphy. He actually lives across the street from me.
Take the easy path out.
That's it. But I got 42% of the vote, I think it was. And I actually like walking door to door. I like meeting the people in my district. So I didn't win, but I sat back and I waited until 2010, and I ran again and I won.
Excellent. You faced the challenge, of course, of being a minority party in a state that is run by a political party. Now, we used to all say it's been 70 years. Well, now it's actually into the 80 plus, isn't it? Since the Bloodless Revolution. Check your history books, folks. And as I like to point out, regardless of your political philosophy or theory how things should be, that level of political domination has not worked well for the state at any level.
I don't think it has. And listen, I'm a Republican because I'm a fiscal conservative. And by that I mean that every dollar we take from people, we should be maximizing the value. And I just think that there's too much money in government that's being wasted, that I'm going to take it from you because I want to spend your money on my priorities. Well, they might not be your priorities. I think you should be able to keep as much money in your wallet as possible because you're the one making it. You're the one who gets up every morning, puts on your shoes, and goes out the door. So that's the fiscal conservative in me. I think we should have data-driven decision-making. We shouldn't just be passing laws because, well, it feels good.
Right. Now, to your credit, now let's flash forward a few years, where you started to emerge as a leadership figure was your involvement in what I'll call the study group.
Yes.
You and other legislators, to your credit, decided to kind of step back, if you will, and take a larger view at the history of certain investments in this state.
Yes.
And what's fascinating to me is,
He's talking about the convention center.
Yeah, gotta go there. But what's fascinating to me is that there's two groups of people that can it's not even a question of revisionist history, they can just ignore history, and that's state legislatures and weathermen. We don't look back. We've already forgotten about the storm that our local weathermen kind of missed this week.
Yeah.
We've already forgotten about that. And when it comes to bond issues, so now the state has got a long troubled history. I call it my edifice complex, if you will, where I think the term was build it and pray like hell someone shows up. And one of the issues that you focused on was the Convention Center Authority. And of course, that's a run-up
to the
Pawsox. Right. You know,
we've seen this movie before.
And we know how the movie ends. So what was your takeaway from your analysis with this study? And who was in the original study group? There were a number of you that got together.
Yeah, we called it the Republican Policy Group. And we did it that way because if you try to study any issue through a regular commission, it's actually controlled by the speaker. And they were never going to let us study the Convention Center Authority. So we did it outside the normal process, but we did it in the State House. We got all of the documents. We made sure that what we were finding was the truth. So we went to the newspapers, we got the original documents, we battled the Convention Center Authority to get documents from them. And that building was promised to be self-sustaining within the first year of operation.
Right.
They said, nope, it will pay for itself. Don't worry, people of Rhode Island, it will pay for itself. And then they got the people to agree, okay, we'll have a convention center then. Some of the contracts that they gave out went from $12,000 to $12 million. Change orders. And now, it has never been in the black since its inception. And now, this year, it took $30 million. By the time we actually pay off all the bonds that we gave for that convention center, it will be over $750 million. And that came from an economic impact study that said it would pay for itself within the first year. Don't you just love it?
They said, build it and pray somebody shows up. Now, what's fascinating is, and we'll take a break in a second, what's fascinating is, under the current, the late great Vincent A. Buddy Cianci came up with the term, what he called the vapor story, which is a story that is huge and then disappears into the atmosphere.
It gets built and people move their attention to something else. But every year that Convention Center Authority has cost us money. And we are now, this building, or a set of buildings that was supposed to pay for itself, where DOA is covering in their budget their snow removal, their heating or something, the veterans. We're paying for its roof. We're paying for all of the repairs on the building, the renovations and repairs. It's an enormous amount. I think it could be better. I'm not suggesting that we ever tear it down, but you have no idea how they pay themselves in that building too. They drive, we pay for their cars to take them to and from work. They are private cars. Taxpayers are paying for that. We pay the wait staff, some of the wait staff, $80,000 a year as a salary, and then they get benefits. My son worked for 4 years as a waiter. He never even came close to $80,000, and he didn't get benefits on top of it.
Yeah, I think perhaps the staff at the Capitol Grill, who are wonderful professionals, might be in that.
They might get close, but
that's an awful tall order. Well, and again, and it's funny because in my political life, if you will, one moment stands out, and it was watching late night. I think it was whatever then Channel 10's version of Newsmakers was, and just fundamentally, without being political, I listened to the tales then about the convention center and what it was going to do. This doesn't seem to work. I mean, I don't know why, but just something's wrong here. And I remember watching that the first time they floated the trial balloon, because you know that no one ever comes out and actually makes an absolute statement. They let things kind of work their way into the conversation. Well, this was never really intended to make money. It's to drive business into the town. And in the next segment, we'll talk about the stadium a little bit, but we're hearing this again. To your knowledge, has there ever been a significant state study to analyze, based on the real historical data, what the economic impact of the Rhode Island Convention Center Authority is?
So, Don't ever trust an economic impact study. Just never, ever trust it. Because whoever is paying for the study gets what they pay for. And the taxpayers aren't in the mix at all.
Wow.
Take a break.
Folks, joining me in studio is Patricia Morgan. Of course, she is the Republican House Minority Leader for your General Assembly here in the great state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations. She is, of course, a candidate for the nomination of governor and will be doing battle soon enough with one of my favorite people, our current governor. That's a moment I can't wait for the first debate. This segment, and like so many segments, is brought to you by Air Sciences, airsciences.net. Darryl Gould and his team of dedicated, I call them biologists, are in a frenzy right now working against what we all know is an epic outbreak of flu, norovirus, and just about every pestilence known to man. I referred to Rhode Island earlier this week in sort of a dated reference to being the Andromeda strain recipient. Everyone I know is suffering from this. Normally, Air Sciences specializes in issues like mold remediation, biohazards. But folks, if you're looking for an organization to, whether you have a small office space, a daycare center, whether you're a nursing home facility, if you're looking for an organization that's going to come in and do a professional job of essentially cleansing your office down to its core, then I'd ask you to go to airsciences.net. As always, this is independent media at its most basic level. Organizations like Air Sciences, Yacht Club Soda, Beacon Shipping Logistics are heroes in the community because they're willing to support independent programming like this that will bring you an issues, as our former president would say, orientated conversation where we're not simply engaging in sound bites or the political equivalent of SportsCenter. So we ask you to support airsciences.net. Of course, joining me in studio again is Patricia Morgan. We are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage, porn-free, civilly disobedient media. Of course, coalitionradio.us, facebook.com/the Coalition Radio, and the mighty Twitter at coalition_radio. Coalitionradio.us, where you'll find a link to these and all shows where they'll live in perpetuity for your viewing pleasure. We've been talking about her background, what her sort of political amen moment was. Life before Patricia Morgan was a public figure. And of course, we rounded out the half hour, I should say, talking about the convention center and the convention center authority and what a significant financial drain that represents. Of course, now we
You know, let me. The convention center, in its defense, brings conventions here. There's no doubt about it. It contributes to our economy. What I've been saying is it could contribute so much more and be so much less of a drain. I think they should be paying for themselves. But more than that, they should be bringing even more business to Rhode Island. And I don't think they are because they're not working at it. They don't have at least when we studied it, which was 4 years ago, 4 years ago, they didn't have a real marketing plan. They didn't have a marketing strategy. They were just kind of coming in, and whatever came their way seemed to be what happened and what they booked.
Right.
When they should be out there doing real work at making that a real economic driver in our state. God knows we need it.
Well, and let's look at tourism in general, because tourism is, fun-sized is upon us now. And that's kind of cute. I kind of get that. But let's look at the bigger picture. Now, full disclosure, earlier this year, I worked with the Convention Center Authority in an attempt to bring a national convention here. What I found, and their efforts were good enough, what I found was that Providence, unfortunately, is not competitive with a significant part of the country in national conventions. That convention instead is going to Austin, Texas, in part because of the expense of doing business in Rhode Island. Now, this was a national convention that would have brought probably 2,000 to 3,000 people in town. Really, what my work with the Convention Center Authority determined was really the ideal size. It was a fun-sized convention. It was national in scope, but not overwhelming in size. It was really ideal for Rhode Island. And Providence, in so many ways, is an ideal city because of its, it's a walking city, wonderful restaurants here within walking distance of the Go Local Live studios. But the room costs were too high in competing with, because we had a national competition that I participated in. All the costs were just a little bit too high. And that's exacerbated because not the unwillingness of local companies to host it, but quite frankly, the tax structure. The entire structure of how we do business here basically blew us out of the market. We were 10 to 20% more expensive than competing cities who were all, I mean, we weren't going after, the organization was not going to host in Boston or New York. They were looking at mid-sized cities like Austin and Providence and Albuquerque and those style cities. And we simply couldn't make the grade financially. Everyone agreed it would be a wonderful place to have it.
Yeah, there's honestly so much to love in Rhode Island, but not our politics.
Now, but let's look at how we do, and this is my concern. I had the opportunity a couple of years ago when the show was first starting to interview the then chairman of the Southern Rhode Island organization that handled it. And at that time, I believe we had 4 tourism boards across the state. And their funding essentially relied in large part on a percentage of the sales tax that was generated. I'll call it the tourism style taxes that were generated by the area businesses. And what I found really attractive about that was a sort of a kind of a reverse user fee. I mean, the better they were at their job,
the more they got.
The more they got.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds great. And so you had these organizations, and I continue to be astonished by the work of the people in South County who, and I won't diminish Providence or the Newport people because they do, I think, a wonderful job as well overall. But, here you have South County where they literally created from scratch an identity. Mm-hmm. And so you have wonderful occupancy rates down there, and it's become an alternative vacation spot for the New York crowd as well as the Boston crowd. Flash forward now, we had those 4, it was working. It was, quite frankly, it was one of the few things in Rhode Island government that was working. Now we have the Commerce Corporation, which seems hell-bent to find a mission. We're spending more money creating yet another website, another media identity. What's your approach to generate? I mean, first of all, should the state, at a state level, even be involved in this? Isn't this best left to a professional private sector?
I'm not sure what you're asking me. Should Commerce Corp be...
Right. First of all, should Commerce Corp even be involved? Is this mission creep?
Honestly, when I heard that we were going to coordinate all of the different bureaus, I thought, well, that's a good idea. Let's coordinate them. Let's make sure they're talking to one another. They're helping one another. Because if somebody comes to Rhode Island, it's not just Newport. It's not just Federal Hill. We have the world's the largest collection of frescoes in North America in Woonsocket. We have the Sistine Chapel of Rhode Island in Woonsocket, and nobody knows about it. Mm-hmm. So we need to magnify that. We have we have a lot of beautiful things here. So I thought it was about them all working together, coordinating, and I'm not sure that that's what's happening. I've looked at the commerce, the new marketing of Rhode Island, and they make wild claims about how much they've done. Even this fund size. Well, as soon as I heard it on radio, as soon as we put the fund size out there, we got 1,400 bookings in our hotels. Well, how does that compare to the same period last year?
And how much is that cannibalizing the existing systems?
Was there something else going on? Was there something at PPAC that brought people to town? Was there something at the convention center? Was there something up at Brown University?
And why is government booking hotels?
Well, but you get what I'm saying. They're saying this fund size was what brought it all here. Well, I don't think so. Mm-hmm. So they make wild claims. That's what that economic impact studies, everything, they take all the data and make out it was this one little fund size thing that did it. But should government be in that? I think private industry does it best. Free markets do it best. Mm-hmm. They do it more efficiently with our money. They actually react better to the customers. Mm-hmm. So no, should government be in it? No.
Commerce Corporation.
Free markets.
Absolutely. Commerce Corporation, of course, now brings us to hashtag 38 Stadium. It's been, the current argument exists with the pro stadium crowd that A, it's not 38 studios. And to which we respond, okay, if you want to draw a distinct legal parallel, it's probably not 38 studios. But it is convention center, because we're building yet another facility that's going to act in direct competition with private facilities. The other thing is, argument always seems to be, well, that's the way it's done. It's not working, folks. Why are we going to double down on failure? The third frustration here is that an inordinate amount of time is spent handicapping where it is as opposed to why it should happen or not happen.
Right.
In your opinion, well, let's handicap it for a second. Where do you think it stands? But most importantly, why should it or should it not happen?
I am opposed to taxpayer funding of the new stadium. I have been from the beginning. It is a private company, and we don't go out and build facilities for every private company.
Mm-hmm.
If we did, there would be no taxpayers left in Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
We simply can't afford to do it. I don't know who convinced the first state or city to
Mm-hmm.
build them a stadium, but it is not a moneymaker for taxpayers.
Mm-hmm.
If it was a moneymaker, then the owners would buy it themselves.
Right.
There's where the free market comes in. To me, the stadium is about insiders, people with access, going in, saying, I want some taxpayer money, and being given that all clear. We'll take care of it for you. That's not how we should be doing government.
Agreed.
How does it stand?
There's really no, we can get into the mechanics of whether it'll make money, not make money, but really that's the whole point, though, isn't it? We shouldn't even really have to get into a minute fiscal analysis of it. It's just, should government have any role in subsidizing private facilities?
That's it. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And if we look at it really, if you don't believe any, remember what I said, don't believe any economic impact study
Mm-hmm.
you hear, because whoever pays for it gets the result that they ask for. I do not believe that it pays for itself over the long haul. The current stadium that we just finished paying for, every few years they want to rebuild it. So now we will always be on the hook. Taxpayers will be always on the hook to rebuild, remodel, redo something, pour money into this stadium. That's number one. Number two, the owners are really only putting $12 million in.
Right.
That's all they're putting in. And they keep saying, oh, they're putting 51. No, they're taking tax dollars that we would have gotten, and they're saying, well, the tax dollars come from us,
Right.
so use that to pay off our bonds.
It's the big lie.
It's the big lie.
I mean, ultimately, what seems to be missing, and my words, not yours, and I blatantly steal this from Rudy Cheeks, who I think is one of the geniuses of, clown prince and genius of Rhode Island politics. I love Rudy Cheeks' work. He calls it Halitosis Hall. And Halitosis Hall seems to be able to manufacture these urban legends and myths. Halitosis Hall needs an economics intervention. We need to, and with your assistance, what we'll do is we'll sneak in one day and we'll put economics, that freshman in college economics book we all took, and put it on every desk and put them on lockdown and make them read the first chapter. Because if the money isn't spent at the stadium, it's going to be spent elsewhere without the burden of having to pay for a stadium.
That's right. And let's face it, a stadium has 71 games a year, so it's going to be used 71 days a year for what kind of jobs? Part-time, seasonal, low-paying jobs. The taxpayers are giving Pawtucket a beautiful new train station, a train stop. I think if they had spent the last 2 years figuring out how to maximize that train station,
Right.
How are they going to market Pawtucket as the bedroom community to Boston? How are they going to make it an attractive area around there where people can stop and get a drink after work or get a bite to eat or whatever? But they're not. They're spending and grinding and grinding and grinding away on a big expensive building that will give us part-time, seasonal, low-paying workers for 71 days a year.
Right. And
That's not economic development.
And ironically, the implication that it will become a year-round facility, to me, only tears at their argument even more, because quite frankly, there are other privately financed, privately owned businesses in the area that already exist to compete for the dollar of the working Rhode Islander.
Yeah.
And so we continue to build. We've got, if that's built, we've got these two huge state organizations in the Blackstone Valley, the casino and a baseball stadium, that do nothing but absorb money, the entertainment dollar of the average Rhode Islander, and like that giant vacuum cleaner H. Ross Perot used to talk about, and put it into state coffers.
Giant vacuum cleaner. Yeah.
Folks, if you're just joining us, you're listening to Patricia Morgan. She is, of course, the minority leader for your House of Representatives here in the state of Rhode Island. She's running for governor. Soon enough, she'll be duking it out with Gina Raimondo. Again, I can't wait. It'll be great. Those debates will be magic. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio. You know all the other sites. Of course, I bring up Twin River.
Yeah.
And I know we're all over the place in the conversation. I have a feeling you and I could talk on the air for about 3 hours.
Oh, we probably.
Maybe you know, after this whole silly primary thing is behind you, let's have a 3-hour Pat Morgan. We'll have a Pat-a-thon, okay?
Okay.
Pat and Pat talking politics. The current budget. The first thing that screams to me is, and in one sense it's a minor point, but I think it's emblematic of the problem at large. You've got a not insignificant piece of the budget being based on the existence of sports betting, which isn't even legal yet. If I could briefly break out the problems there, and you let me know what your reaction is. First of all, the appropriateness of state government essentially funding their budget off of games of chance. Number two, sports betting, that and one of your classmates, if you will, up at Halitosis Hall is talking about electronic scratch tickets. Again, this app. First of all, if we're going, gambling is an activity that can be enjoyed by adults everywhere. Yeah. All right, it's not for us to say yay or nay on that.
No,
All right, but if it's going to be enjoyed everywhere, it should be available as a business to all Rhode Islanders. And the notion that we've granted this monopoly to Twin River Corporation, and we then also give them millions of dollars a year to supplement their advertising budget, despite the fact they have a monopoly.
And they make an enormous amount of money. Just saying. I know, we get 60% and we have to protect that now as a source of revenue for the state. But they get the other 40.
Literally a monopoly.
It's a lot of money.
And they're using it to acquire out-of-state businesses. Their expansion path, my prediction is 10 years from now, we will just be kind of a footnote in the history of the Twin River Gaming Corporation, which will have, and probably won't be named Twin River, and have operations throughout the country, and we'll be just a back office. They're using our taxpayer money, effectively, to fund their growth, which if they were subject to free market competition, I would have no problem with. But the big lie, we'll make that the theme of tonight, the big lie is $29 million for sports betting. But that's the profit for sports betting, for an activity that's not even legal yet. To generate that $29 million, I've been thrown numbers that we would have to generate in excess of $800 million worth of actual sports betting activity. How do you come up with nearly $1 billion in activity from an economy the size of the state of Rhode Island, and how can that not be hugely damaging to local businesses?
Yeah, so you have a lot of points there, obviously. He has a lot of points there. I look at this, we're balancing our budget on sports betting, expansion of sports betting, and marijuana, an expansion of marijuana. Now, I voted for medical marijuana, so I honestly think there should be some compassion centers in South County on the East Bay, so they don't have to come up here all the time to get their medicine. That being said, 12? Maybe you're a libertarian, so maybe you're fine with that. But again, who's getting them and all of that kind of stuff, and how do we make sure that children don't get a hold of the cannabis? The sports betting part of that. I mean, we already have betting. I get it, but is this economic development? I'm just asking you, is this what we think of as economic development now, We should be growing an economy here where people get really good paying jobs. And because they have really good paying jobs, they're paying income taxes. When they buy things, we get sales taxes. The corporations that they work for are making money and they're paying taxes. And instead, we're going to people who want to bet on sports. That's not economic development. It's just not economic development.
The irony here is...
It's not job creating.
I'm going to tie Pawtucket into the gambling, into everything. The irony in this situation is that the one bright spot, and this is despite the announcement of the closing of Bucket Brewery, which I see as shakeout in a growing industry, the one bright spot in the Pawtucket economy is, in fact, the brewery business. And the brewery business started to blossom because state government backed away from onerous rules which prohibited breweries. Mm-hmm. So the one thing that's happened positively as a result of General Assembly activity is a direct correlation to removing government. Removing
regulations, removing bad policies that we had that prevented them from making and selling their microbrews. Right? Exactly. That's economic development. That's actually manufacturing.
Right.
That's jobs. That's suppliers giving the hops and the
people investing in physical assets. It's a real business.
It's a real business. There's real jobs there. There's real suppliers that are making
wealth creation.
Jobs. It's wealth creation. What is sports betting? It's not. I look at Commerce Corp. Yep, they're putting up a whole lot of hotels and apartments, and we can say there are cranes in the sky. There are cranes in the skies for hotels. Those are real estate deals. That is not economic development.
Right.
It's not economic development. What kind of jobs come out of hotels?
Low-paying service jobs.
Low-paying service jobs. What kind of jobs come out of apartments? Maintenance?
Yep. And special tax deals.
Very few jobs.
Right, special tax deals being paid for by municipalities that can ill afford to do so. We're sitting across the street from one of them, by the way. You know, that little loft building that's up there by a rather famous politically connected person whose family member happened to be the first employee of the convention center. There, I said it out loud. You know, despite generations of growth, I look at situations like this, and it's the usual suspects. And the problem I have with this is that these folks for generations have made money off of Rhode Island. God bless America, that's capitalism. But at what point in time do we stop equating with giving back because I'm being subsidized? Whether it be the Pawtucket Red Sox, whether it be the developer across the street, or any of these other people, their notion of giving back is making money off of our subsidies. That's not giving back.
No.
If the Pawtucket Red Sox owners, and I would say this every show, simply did the right thing and built a stadium on their own dime, that's investing in the community, and they would be heroes overnight.
You know, I want the Pawsox to stay here. Right. I do. I want them to stay here. But that's a private business, and those owners, if it's really a good deal, if it's really revenue positive, then they'll take that deal.
God bless them.
They'll do it. They'll build their own stadium.
Make the money.
Make the money. But they must not believe that it's going to make the money because they're not willing to do it. They want us to just give them a new building. It's not fair to taxpayers.
Incredibly enough, we've only got 7 or 8 minutes left. So if we can, in short order, and let's make this a regular thing as the year goes along and we get closer to the election. Give us a snapshot of some of your other priorities, if you will. I know it's tough in 7 or 8 minutes, but as governor, some of the issues you just want to dive right into.
One is healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So I've looked at this budget, and I think your viewers, know that our hospital system, our healthcare system in Rhode Island is in serious trouble. Mm-hmm. The Visiting Nurses Association, one of the oldest and most established professional nursing, in-home nursing, is gone. Went out of business. Bankrupt. Two of the largest home health providers services gone because of UHIP, because we weren't giving them any more patients. They just stopped. We can't figure out whether they're eligible or not because our system is broken. So you folks who have CNAs who would go and help people stay in their homes, we can't give you any new patients. That was a critical component in controlling the cost of health care in Rhode Island. Gone. Nursing homes are suffering. We've just, their rates, their Medicaid rates have been frozen for a couple of years, and we're just letting it go up a little bit in this budget. But they're in seriously bad shape. Our hospitals are losing money, and yet we are going to take more money from them in this budget. Health, it's called Neighborhood, which is the insurance provider for Medicaid. It does most of our Medicaid insurance work. They're going to lose $40 million, I understand. All of those things are going to shift the burden over to the commercial market. Do you know what the commercial market is? It's the state, because we buy insurance for our state employees. It's businesses, because they help their employees buy insurance. It's their employees who are sharing the premiums with their employers. There is going to be tremendous pressure, and we're going to see those premiums rise. So I thought this was not a serious budget. I don't think this was a budget that we pandered to all the different little voting groups out there in order to win election. But it wasn't about actually putting something together that made any sense for Rhode Island. And I'm not supposed to bash the governor, but she said she was going to reinvent Medicaid. Well, that was a failure. We have to. We have to look at this healthcare system and make rational plans to control the cost, to give everybody quality health care, because I think everybody deserves it. But we've got to figure out how to work. Hospitals work with nursing homes, work with pharmacies, work with the insurance agencies, work with home health care providers. If they all work together, I was told by hospital executives that they could save us money. They could. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes attention, and that's what I want to do.
Excellent.
Did I talk too much?
No, that was no. That pretty much nailed it. Got just a couple minutes left. Your thoughts, bubbling up from from a number of sources, and we've covered it extensively here, is the call for an inspector general. Any thoughts on that yet, or is that something you're still?
No, I would absolutely. I know there is waste, fraud, and abuse in state government.
No, here.
Yeah. So go figure.
I'm shocked. Shocked. How could that be?
There is, and the studies have showed us that where the states that have inspector generals, their tax burden is actually lower and dramatically lower on their citizens. We absolutely need an inspector general. I don't think we can get one through the General Assembly, but if I'm governor, I can create one by executive order inside my office.
So if elected, I'm going to put you on the spot now. If you're elected governor, you will, by executive order, you will create the office of inspector general.
I will. I think we need it. I think they pay for themselves. I don't have to protect the past. I think we owe it to taxpayers to find out what's broken and fix it.
Line item veto. Ken Block has worked overtime now for a couple of years to his credit. You know, the individual who ended the master lever, he's now like a laser focused his sights on line item veto. Your thoughts?
I think it can be an effective tool. We have a balanced legislature, so any veto the governor puts in at this point can be overturned by the legislature. But you know what it does? It makes them look at it a second time. Do we really need that spending?
Right. So, you're good with that?
I am.
Excellent. The hour's up already. Like I said, I have a feeling we'll sometime in the near future we'll just spend 3 or 4 or 5 hours just going through every single issue. I'm impressed by your attention to detail and the big picture analysis you're providing us in the era of the most transparent governor ever.
Oh yeah, she thinks about it all day long. How to avoid it?
Get any 18th century maps lately? Sorry.
Yeah. Yes.
That still sticks.
Remember that?
I remember that very clearly.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, that was a magic moment. Next time you're on, we'll talk about tolls. We'll talk about the tax structure here. There is I guess, military folks would refer to Rhode Island as a target-rich environment.
It is.
There is so much to be done, and what's probably the most disappointing aspect of the current regime, and I use that term intentionally, is that 3+ years into it, they've really worked on none of it.
That's right. And there is a lot. It is a target-rich environment.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much to do, and we must start doing it.
Now.
We must. People are leaving. The largest demographic leaving Rhode Island right now is working-age people.
Mm-hmm.
It's our graduates. It's the people who started their career and then they can't find opportunities.
Yeah.
We need to do something about that. We need to keep them here.
Despite having, by New England standards, a reasonable cost of living, despite having arguably some of the finest universities on the planet here, despite having a wonderful lifestyle, if in fact you're employed, that being a significant challenge, because despite the numbers, I contend that so many Rhode Islanders are underemployed. Right, not reaching their full potential or have left the job market.
I'll give you one more data point.
Yep, absolutely.
45% of the jobs created since the recession pay less than $35,000.
Yeah.
That is not what you go to college for.
Right.
That's why they leave.
And
you talk about it's a beautiful place, but if you're making 35 grand, you can't
right.
go to all of the beautiful places.
No, and which is why a direct correlation to having effectively the highest poverty rate in New England, which, given everything that you and I are surrounded by, I'll close off on this point, given everything that is within walking distance, an Ivy League university, a world-class art school, great corporations, to realize the highest poverty rate in New England is heartbreaking, isn't it?
It is.
Patricia Morgan, candidate for governor, I think is going to be one of the most compelling races, if you will, in recent Rhode Island history. Probably one of the most important. You hear that all the time, but I believe firmly that the state is at a breaking point. I relish the notion of our current governor being forced to actually address policy issues by Ms. Morgan. It's going to be, this is going to be great. Congratulations on your decision to enter the race. I appreciate all the hard work you continue to do on behalf of Rhode Island taxpayers, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
I look forward to it too.
Thank you so very much. Folks, this is the Coalition Loud and Proud, Outrage Porn-Free, Civilly Disobedient Media, broadcasting live at the Worldwide Coalition Media Headquarters here at the Go Local Live Broadcast Center, 90 Way Boston Street, in the heart of the city we love, La Prave. It's a chilly night here, but please take the opportunity to come downtown to any one of a number of wonderful restaurants here. You see a lot of them on the Go Local Live segment. Providence needs your support. There's so many entrepreneurs within walking distance of the studio right now that quite frankly deserve your support. CoalitionRadio.us, Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, and of course on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_Radio. We're going to take a quick break, and Mr. Farina of the City of Cranston, Chairman of the City Council, is going to be joining us. It's going to be all things. We're going to have a Cranston Palooza for the next hour. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay.